Have you ever just looked around at the world and thought, who is really pulling the strings here? Who's actually in charge? It's such a basic question, but it gets to the very heart of how our societies work. So today we're going to unpack some of the most powerful ideas ever developed to try and answer that exact question. Let's get right into it.
It seems so simple on the surface, doesn't it? But the answers are complex, they're controversial, and they are absolutely fascinating. Is it some secret group of billionaires in a smoky room? Is it the people? Or is power something weirder and more complicated than that? Let's dive into the leading theories.
Okay, our first stop is the elitist theory. This is probably the one that feels the most intuitive, maybe the most dramatic. It basically argues that no matter what the system looks like on paper, whether it's a democracy, a kingdom, you name it, a small, powerful, cohesive group is always the one running the show.
At its core, the theory paints a really simple picture. Society is a pyramid. You've got a tiny group of rulers sitting right at the top, and then, well, there's everybody else at the bottom. The really interesting part, though, is how that pyramid gets built and how it stays standing. So let's look at a few of the key thinkers who really tried to crack that code.
First up, we have Vilfredo Pareto. He argued that all of human history is really just one long story of one elite group replacing another. He called it the circulation of elites. Basically, a new, hungrier, more cunning group rises up, kicks out the old, comfortable elite, and then they eventually get comfortable themselves, just waiting for the next ambitious group to come along and do the same thing to them. It's a cycle.
Then you've got Gaetano Mosca, who came at it from an organizational angle. His big idea, and it's a powerful one, is that an organized minority will always dominate a disorganized majority. I mean, think about it. A small, united group that knows exactly what it wants can easily control a massive population that's fragmented, passive, and doesn't know how to work together.
And that brings us to Robert Michels and his famous iron law of oligarchy. Now, what's so wild about this idea is that Michels wasn't studying dictatorships. He studied democratic groups, like political parties. And he found that even organizations built on the idea of equality inevitably become ruled by a small leadership team, an oligarchy. Why? Well, because any large organization needs leaders and needs a bureaucracy and needs specialists to function. And that structure just naturally concentrates all the power at the very top. It's an iron law.
But what if that whole top-down pyramid model is just wrong? What if that's not how it works at all? That's where our next theory comes in. The pluralist theory offers a totally different picture of power. It's not a pyramid. It's more like a chaotic, messy marketplace of competing interests.
This comparison here really just nails the debate. On one side, you have that neat elitist pyramid, but on the other, pluralists see a constant, messy tug-of-war. You've got corporations, unions, activist groups, political parties, all pulling in different directions. In this view, power isn't some permanent crown someone wears. It's something that's constantly being fought over and renegotiated.
And what that means is that winning is almost always temporary. So, a bunch of environmental groups might team up and win a big victory on new regulations, but that same group has almost no power when the debate shifts to, say, tax reform. In this model, the government's real job is to be the referee, to manage this endless competition and make sure no single team gets way too powerful and just dominates the game.
So the outcome of all this competition isn't some perfect, idealized democracy. No, it's what the political scientist Robert Dahl called a polyarchy. It's a system where power is spread out across many, many different centers. Yeah, it's messy, it's loud, and it's definitely imperfect, but it's what prevents any one single elite from grabbing total control.
Okay, so we've looked at two huge ideas: power as a pyramid held by the few, and power as a tug-of-war between the many. But our third perspective, which comes from postmodern thinkers like Michel Foucault, asks a much more radical question. What if we're thinking about power itself all wrong?
Now, this is a total game changer. What Foucault is saying here is that power isn't a thing you can hold like a crown or a scepter. It's not a possession. It's more like a relationship, a whole network of forces that runs through the entire social body.
So, think of it this way. Power isn't just in the government building. It's in the way doctors get to define what illness is, the way teachers define what knowledge is, the way the media defines what's newsworthy. It shapes our very ideas of what's normal and what's acceptable. It's not just about forcing people to do things. It's about shaping who they are and how they see the world. It's less like a hammer and a lot more like the air we breathe.
But whether power is held by an elite, or fought over by a bunch of groups, or flowing through a hidden network, there's a deeper question we have to ask. Why do people just go along with it?
Why don't we all just say no? This is where the absolutely crucial idea of legitimacy comes in. It's the foundation that allows any of these power structures to exist at all.
This is the key, really. Power can't rely on brute force alone for very long. That's just too expensive and way too unstable. For any system to last, the people being ruled have to believe, on some level, that their rulers have the right to rule them. So why do we obey?
This popular acceptance, that's what we call legitimacy. It's like the magic ingredient that turns raw power into recognized authority. And the sociologist Max Weber gave us a brilliant way to understand how different rulers throughout history have managed to get it.
So Weber gave us this really useful framework, identifying three main sources of legitimate authority. First, you have traditional authority, which is based on custom and history. We obey the king because, well, his family has always ruled. Then there's charismatic authority, which comes from the sheer force of a leader's personality. Think of a revolutionary figure who inspires this intense personal devotion. And finally, you have legal rational authority, which is most common today. It's based on impersonal rules and laws. We obey the president not because of who they are, but because of the office they legally hold.
But what happens when a huge chunk of the population just stops believing that the system has the right to rule? Well, that's when you get what political scientists call a legitimation crisis. The government's authority just starts to crumble, and the entire social order can become incredibly unstable.
So the crucial point here is this. These theories aren't necessarily fighting each other to be the one true answer. The best way to think about them is as a toolkit. 4 different lenses you can use to analyze any political situation. You can ask, who are the elites here? Which groups are competing? How is power operating under the surface? And maybe most importantly, what makes this whole system legitimate to its people?
And that really leaves us with a final thought to take away. As you look at the news tonight, or at your own community, or at global politics, which of these lenses seems to fit the best? Is it the few, the many, or that hidden network that's really in charge? You might find the answer changes depending on where and how you look.